Welcome back. As the country prepares to mark 20 years since the 9/11 attacks, President Biden is seeking to make good on a campaign promise to those 9/11 families. Doing so by signing an executive order to declassify documents related to the FBI's investigation into those attacks earlier this month, saying in part, quote, this: "The executive order requires the Attorney General to release the declassified documents publicly over the next 6 months. My heart continues to be with the 9/11 families who are suffering, and my administration will continue to engage respectfully with members of this community. I welcome their voices and insight as we chart a way forward," end quote from the president. Terry Strada lost her husband, Tom, on 9/11. She, along with thousands of others who lost loved ones on that dark day, still fighting for accountability and justice for the terror plot. And Terry joins me now. Terry, thank you so much for taking the time today. And I want you to know we know how important tomorrow is to continue to allow everyone to remember, but just how closely this affects you. Before I ask you about that, how are you remembering your husband tomorrow on such a special day?
Tomorrow, two of my children, Justin and Caitlin, will join me at a private ceremony in New Jersey. And then Justin and I will come into Manhattan and go to the memorial, where I hope to meet my older son later in the day.
Staying with family, and many are reading the names of the victims there at the 9/11 Memorial in Lower Manhattan. That'll happen. I'll get back to what I started with here, Terry. You're also the national chair of the 9/11 Families and Survivors United for Justice Against Terrorism. And just before the president signed the executive order, I know you penned an op-ed questioning where the government's loyalties lie and called on Biden to prioritize American interests and justice over Saudi coddling. The headline reading this for our viewers says, 20 years later, will Biden reveal Saudi terror complicity to 9/11 families like mine, end quote. Again, that from Ms. Strada here. Do you believe that the president's decree is a right step in the right direction? Is it enough? How did that impact you when you knew he was going to release that information?
Yes, this executive order is the first time any administration has taken a step like this for the families to ensure transparency and to allow us to have an opportunity to see what's been kept secret and hidden from us all these years in these investigative reports that our own government did into the role that the kingdom played in the 9/11 attacks. So this is a pivot in the right direction. There's a lot more work to be done. And the first test is coming because the 2016 summary of Operation Encore is scheduled to be released today at the earliest, or tomorrow at the latest. September 11th is the deadline for the first report to be declassified to the greatest extent possible and released to the public and to the families.
Obviously, with the 9/11 Commission that went on for years and years, they never came out explicitly saying Saudis were behind this, but there's a lot of questioning as to the funding and where money went, who sent money where. What are you hoping to find out in this paperwork? What are you hoping that it reveals? Or what are you looking for, rather?
Right. So the 9/11 Commission never had enough funding or had the time permitted to carry out a full investigation into the Saudis. And so after that commission ended, a new investigation began called Operation Encore. And what we're hoping to see in this summary report will be there was a support network put in place by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia here in the United States. Agents that worked for the kingdom were here meeting and greeting the first arriving hijackers in California, arranging for their housing, their bank accounts, their driving lessons. These 9/11 radical Islamist terrorists didn't even speak English, so they had to have help. And the support network. So there's a lot of information. You talked about the money. Yes. How was it funded? How was the money transferred? Where did it come from? Telephone records, that's been kept from us for a very long time, which will connect Saudi nationals to all of this. Recently, in the lawsuit against the kingdom, 40 Saudi nationals have been deposed. And more information will be in these reports about the kingdom.
I know nothing will bring closure, but undoubtedly you want to know more information, as anyone would in that situation, and I hope you find as much as you can through that. Before I go, I want you to tell me about Tom, Your husband. I know he worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, a financial services firm. They lost over 600 employees on that day on 9/11. On the company's page, tribute page, you wrote a touching message about your late husband, and I'll read that to the viewers now. It says this: Tom was and will always be the love of my life. Tom had a heart of gold and was generous beyond words. Always gave you something for your pocket. High-spirited, a life force that will live on in our hearts forever. I will love you for eternity. End quote. That from you. If you can, touch on that. I spoke with Howard Lutnick, the CEO, yesterday, and he talked about that day and losing those employees and still fortifying, remembering those employees to this day and still continue to donate to families like yourself. And tell us about Tom.
Yeah, well, that tribute says it all. He was just an incredibly generous, loving man who was a wonderful father to our 3 children. And I think that's what pains me the most, is that they grew up without him. My youngest was only 4 days old, never had the opportunity to experience anything with his dad. And the other 2's hearts were just completely broken, you know, learning that he was gone and would never be here with us any longer. But he was charismatic. He was an outdoorsman. He loved to fish. He loved to hunt. He loved to play golf. I mean, he was a scratch golfer. Part of his career on Wall Street was that he could play golf with anyone at any time. Loved sports, loved being outdoors, loved his parents, his siblings. He was a wonderful brother, uncle, cousin, friend. I mean, even the guy that polished his shoes, you know, in New York City, when he found out Tom was gone, he just broke down and cried also, because he was just one of the best.
He touched a lot of lives for sure. And we'll continue to remember him here, not only just on this program, but in our hearts forever here. And I know it will be the same for you, Ms. Strada. I appreciate you sharing that story to remember Tom today. There's so many more stories like that out there, and that's why it's important never to forget. Terry Strada.
Absolutely. Never to forget and never let it happen again.
Amen. Terry Strada, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, stay with us. Much more on National Report after this.
It was a day of infamy.